We will wait and have questions at the end. I like the professors to present information. They do this type of thing all the time. They probably can anticipate most of your questions, but there will be time for questions at the end. So without further ado, I am actually going to turn it over to Professor Christopher Hurd. Professor Hurd.
Thanks so much. So my name is Chris Hurd, and I'm the Director of Clinical Programs here at the UH Law Center. I'm also the Director of the Entrepreneurship and Community Development Clinic. I was really excited to talk to this group today because you've shown by your attendance here that you're prioritizing experiential education, right, even before your first day in law school, which is wonderful. So students in the clinical program, something that we as faculty hear from them quite frequently is that they cite their experience in the clinic is one of the most valuable things that they've got to do in law school. Part of that is because it's transformational in terms of developing the skills they need to practice law effectively after graduation. It's also very helpful in getting a job and even outperforming their peers at work who haven't had a clinical experience. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about what you can expect in clinics generally. You'll find that kind of the pedagogy and the approach, even though we have different practice areas as clinical faculty, there are a lot of principles that are the same across all clinics. So I'll start with talking with you a little bit about that, and then we'll get more into detail on the specific clinics. So clinic is an academic course that you take for credit, and it can be during your 2L or your 3L year. So we like you to finish that first year curriculum, but then you'll have clinical opportunities as soon as that summer after your first year. Typically, you've got a very small class size, so it can range between about 3 to 8 students typically. There's 2 components to the course. There's a classroom component that meets generally about once a week, but then the centerpiece of the clinic is really the work that you do for real clients. So for the work that you do in clinic, students have primary responsibility for representing clients, and clinical pedagogy is non-directive. So you're not going to be micromanaged. So my students, they might choose to do something differently than I might have done it, but that's okay. Part of it is that you kind of learn to spread your wings and find your own path to being a lawyer. So there's a great degree of autonomy, and that's something that students adjust to during their time in the clinic. It's different than other work experiences you might have. You're not just assisting the clinical faculty or taking on small discrete tasks. You really are seen by the client as the primary professional working on their matter. So self-motivation is really key to your experience in clinic. And I like to tell my students that they get out of clinic what they put into, right? So everybody's clinic experience is different, and kind of, what you bring to that experience will really inform what you're able to get out of it. All that said, don't be afraid. Clinical faculty, we choose matters that we take on with that in mind. So we like to have just the right amount of challenge in the client matters that you're going to work on. So you should be a little bit uncomfortable, right? Because you are acquiring new skills, and this is something that's different for you, but we wouldn't throw you into something that's inappropriate, for a student to take the lead on. And then conversely, we won't give you something, that's too easy, right? Again, for your skill development, we want to find just the right mix for appropriate challenge for your matters. Also, you're going to receive extensive feedback and support from the clinical faculty on the matters that you work on, right? So again, you're taking the lead, but we're there to back you up. So Professor Marquez, you'll hear from in a little bit. I've heard him say before that, taking clinic is like practicing law with a net, right? So nobody's perfect at practicing law right off the bat. But if you're going to make mistakes initially, right? Everyone does. So if you do that in the clinical environment, we're set up to handle that, right? With the matters that we choose and the supervision and support that you get from faculty. So with that kind of introduction about what a clinic is like, the Law Center has a lot of clinical offerings. So you'll hear from 4 of us today, but we have an extensive number of clinics. I'll just kind of run through the list so you get an idea of the scope, the type of clinics that we have at the Law Center. So we'll have a civil justice clinic starting up in the fall, and that's going to cover a wide range of Texas civil litigation matters. That's actually going to be a merger of 2 of our existing clinics. So you'll hear from Professor Marquez about his work and how that'll fit in to the civil justice clinic. We have an immigration clinic, and you'll hear from Professor Sheffy about that in a little bit. We also have a criminal defense clinic, and you'll hear from Professor Cassidy about his work directing that clinic. And then, like I mentioned, I run the Entrepreneurship and Community Development Clinic. where I assist small businesses and nonprofit clients with transactional work. If you don't want to be a litigator, more interested in the transactional side, then we can certainly accommodate you in my clinic. Other clinics, we have a military justice clinic. So if any of you are interested in becoming a JAG lawyer after graduation, this is an excellent clinic. You'll assist current and former military service members with criminal justice matters. We have a mediation clinic where you can become a trained mediator and you get to mediate real cases. There's an appellate civil rights clinic that deals with appeals around alleged police misconduct and unconstitutional prison conditions. We have an entertainment law clinic. That's a lot about trademark and copyright prosecution, and then counseling, contract drafting, and negotiation in the entertainment industry. In addition to kind of the clinical program that I oversee, we also have a couple other programs at the Law Center that also offer clinical opportunities for students. So again, additional clinical courses that you can take at the Law Center. So we have an innocence investigations clinic and a death penalty clinic that deal with post-conviction relief. We have a juvenile representation clinic. So that represents youth in delinquency proceedings and child protective services cases. We have an education rights clinic, and that represents youth in school discipline hearings. And then we have a juvenile record sealing clinic. And that helps open up employment and housing opportunities by assisting juvenile offenders with sealing their records. So now that I've given you that general overview, I'll talk a little bit about the specific clinic that I run. So again, it's transactional work. So the kind of matters we take on, it's a wide range of corporate and information. We do contract work, tax, real estate, and then some legal compliance. So like I mentioned, our clients are primarily small businesses and nonprofit corporations. So to give you an idea of the types of matters that we work on, we helped a middle school teacher who wanted to open up a healthy eating restaurant. The students worked on forming the legal entity and then lease negotiation, across from the landlord's council to get his lease in place. We represented two founders of a comic book shop in the 3rd Ward. So we assisted them with forming an LLC, and then we counseled them about their contract with their distributor. We've helped some real estate investors form a series LLC. We've done a conversion of a limited liability company to a public benefit corporation when that entity form was adopted in Texas. We've helped a lot of worker cooperatives with initial formation, and then we do a significant amount of work for nonprofit entities. So we help with formation of nonprofit corporations and then their application for tax exempt status. And we also help them with governance issues and with compliance. So that's kind of the core of what my clinic is. And happy to take your questions at the end. But I guess I'll go ahead and pass it off to Professor Locascio so he can tell you about the criminal defense clinic.
Sure, thanks, Chris. I'm going to share my screen here. I have a PowerPoint just for any of us visual learners as well. Can everybody, I assume everybody can see, Angela, everyone's good? Cool. Okay, so my name is Eric Locascio. I am an adjunct professor here at the University of Houston Law Center. I teach the Criminal Defense Practice Clinic. A little bit about me to start off. I went to University of Texas, got my BA in English back in 2007, graduated from the Law Center in 2011. I was a Harris County District Attorney or Assistant District Attorney from 2012 to 2015, where I handled everything, essentially every type of case except for rapes, murders, and aggravated robberies. Every other type of case was mine. I ended up quitting that job for various reasons and became a private criminal defense attorney, where I was taking court appointments and retained clients from 2015 to 2019. And then back in fall 2018, that's when the University of Houston graciously allowed me to start teaching this class, which I am very thankful for. And I've been doing that since then. And I also became an assistant public defender in April 2019. So I am a county employee. I take only retained cases that are given to our office by the 23 district court judges. So enough about me. What do we do in indigent defense is essentially what we do. So we represent people who cannot afford attorneys. If you're at all familiar with Law and Order or any of the criminal law zeitgeist in this country, you've heard you have a right to an attorney. one will be appointed to you if you cannot afford it. Well, that's me. I am the one who, if you cannot afford, you get me, or one of my colleagues, of course. We are appointed by the judges, as I mentioned. Our office is now accepting cases from all 23 district courts. And we actually have a computer program that helps us actually assign those cases out. We tend to get weird, tough, complicated cases or complicated clients. Oftentimes I am an attorney, I am the third or fourth attorney on a case, just because for various reasons other attorneys have withdrawn or weren't getting along with the client. We tend to get those cases. Right now we are not doing capitals, although I have heard rumblings that we may be doing them in the future, but no capitals currently. So the highest cases we take are first-degree felonies. What do we do in my actual clinic though? So essentially, if you sign up for the clinic, you become an extension of me, which is cool and horrifying at the same time. You essentially become part of the defense team. If you've ever seen any, of course, documentaries on anything dealing with criminal cases, you see all the defense attorneys sitting around a table and talking about the case. You are now one of those people when you sign up for my clinic. We work on my cases. I have a couple cases that are I have completed that I use as teaching tools, but otherwise I do assign out my current cases, and we'll talk about in a sec what we do with those. But the requirements to get into the clinic: 30 hours completed, so essentially 2L or 3L. You must have taken or have concurrent enrollment in evidence. I do at least want you to understand evidence because it's an extremely important part of what we do. Good academic standing, of course, and you must attend part of the clinic orientation before school starts. There's a full clinic orientation on one day, and then there is a separate orientation for my clinic on another day. The clinic hours are required. It's 150 hours. So you have to do 150 hours worth of work. And I have it's non-exhaustive list, but it is an extensive list on my syllabus in the course description in the course schedule. If you're curious about some of the ways just off the top of my head are court observation, any legal research on any criminal law matters, CLEs if you decide, those are continuing legal education, any type of seminars, I tend to count those. And because of the COVID nature of things, I have allowed watching some criminal documentaries and writing some response papers on those, just to get out to pad hours that way. So I have 3 students each semester. What you do is essentially you shadow myself, and there are also other opportunities to shadow attorneys in the public defender's office. You observe courtroom procedures. You essentially can watch docket from beginning to end and understand exactly what happens in a given criminal docket on a given day in Harris County. Within our clinic itself, within our class, we do evidence analysis. We do interviews of witnesses and clients. We do client management, which is where we talk about how a case could be resolved with clients. And of course, we do trial and hearing preparation as well. That's a huge part of it as well, because if I have a case that's set for trial, you are now part of my trial team, and you are helping me prepare for trial. I essentially treat you like an associate. You are not my intern. You are not unpaid person. You are my associate, and I expect you to act that way. And so you can get that real world experience in law school, and you technically should be able to hit the ground running if you were to decide to be a criminal defense attorney and you take my clinic. What exactly do? We analyze evidence to determine the best course of action for the client. We manage client expectations and kind of hold their hand as we go through this process. For some of them, it's their first time. For some people, this is not their first rodeo, but we still like to guide them through the process. We conduct hearings and trials in court. COVID has made that a little interesting currently, but we're slowly getting back to a lot more in-person stuff. And the public defender's office uses a holistic defense model, which is where we also try to help clients with any housing or education or substance abuse needs that they may have. We have a lot of different people in our office who are willing to help clients in that regard. My clinic is also a springboard for other opportunities for you in the criminal law world. There's the Innocence Project, as Professor Hurd mentioned. There's the Innocence Investigation of the Death Penalty Clinic at the University of Houston Law Center. Those are very good clinics if you want to keep expanding your criminal law knowledge. There's also opportunities with Lone Star Legal Aid, Beacon Law. Those help underserved and underprivileged members of our community who are charged with crimes. There are opportunities for internships at the Public Defender's Office. I have a number of students, former students who were interns and now actually work for the Public Defender's Office, if I may say so myself. And there's also opportunities for internships and externships with private defense attorneys that I have many friends and colleagues with who are willing to take on interns and so things like that, if that's something you want to continue doing. My information is here if you'd like to take it down. I should be in your global email list as well. But that's my email address, and that's my work line and the main PDO line. I'm oftentimes at the criminal courthouse on Franklin Street, and I'm also working from home some as well. But that's the best way to contact me is email if you have any questions or anything. And of course, I'll answer your questions at the end of our session here. But thank you for attending, and I will turn it over to Professor Sheffy.
Well, Professor Locascio, before you turn it over, I just have to say,
Yes.
you got me like all excited listening to you, right? For everybody else joining us, I did not graduate from the University of Houston Law Center, fine law center. I did graduate from the University of Houston, University of Akron Law Center, where I was in a criminal clinic. Loved it, right? So you got me like, and then got an internship like you talked about. I worked for the Philadelphia Public Defender's Office as a result of that clinical experience, and tried all kind of cases just like you, including homicide. So I'm all like geek. I feel like I should go back.
Good. Yeah, you know what, if there's ever opportunities, we're always happy to have anyone help, because luckily there is kind of a bit of an attitude change happening towards public defenders in this country. We used to be very much derided and piled upon and thinking that we're just government employees with giant caseloads. But
Right.
I've had clients in the holdover say, I want a public defender. I don't want a private attorney. I want a public defender. And we were like, okay, well, that doesn't get any better than that for a word of mouth.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Sorry, Professor Sheffy. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. First off, congratulations on being admitted to U of H. Go Cougs. My name is Parker Sheffy. I'm one of 4 professors in the Immigration Justice Clinic. And I think one thing that might have come through both Professor Hurd's and Professor Locascio's presentations was the idea of all of the various forms of practice or the other skills that you're going to be exposed to in clinic. And I think that it wasn't until maybe my 2nd or 3rd year as a practicing attorney that I really understood why it's a practice. Because whenever you're going to go to you enter law school, welcome to your 1L year, here's your course list, and you're going to sit in these substantive classes where you're going to learn the law. There's so much beyond just the actual law. That is what actually makes it a practice, because it's an ongoing set of skills. So for example, how do you interact with a client? How do you do the clerical tasks, making copies, sending letters to the right place, navigating a court, which oddly, each of them have their own rules, and that can be incredibly confusing and frustrating. So beyond just the letter of the law and the process of the law, there's a lot that goes into it, that it's always a way in which you are going to have to engage and continue to apprise yourself. And the clinic, I think, is one of the unique spaces within the law school setting that you have that actual exposure. So within the immigration clinic, I wouldn't say it's a misnomer, because it's definitely immigration focused, but it's not necessarily uniquely narrowly immigration, because our immigration system in this country is a sprawling system that has tentacles that go all over the place. And those tentacles touch on the criminal legal system, the family-based legal system, that you have the administrative state, you have state court proceedings, and you have federal litigation. The beauty is at our clinic, our hands are kind of like in all of those tentacles. So you'll have a broad range of exposure to not just the immigration-based issues, but the ways in which immigration intersects with other forms of the law, providing thus an even broader exposure to the just criminal, rather to the legal system in general. And to Chris's point at the very beginning, makes you better for an interview. You have the ability to speak to very real experiences that expand a broad range of the system. So one thing that may or may not, depending upon your familiarity with Houston, Houston in the 2010 census, 1 in 4 individuals, 1 in 4 residents were foreign born. In the 2020 census, 1 in 3 individuals in the Houston area are foreign born. And so therefore, our clinic clients literally span the globe and reflects both the significance and importance of immigration to not only this country, but uniquely to Houston, that provides, I think, above and beyond additional value and experiences that you might not necessarily have in other immigration clinics outside of at least the greater Houston area. So what do we do within the clinic? Well, we essentially provide comprehensive representation, and by comprehensive with the quotes, we do everything except for employment-based immigration. And so big buckets, those would be asylum. So asylum is somebody who is outside of their country of origin, and they cannot or will not return to that country based upon persecution that they have experienced either at the hand of the government or at the hands of an organization that the government is unable or unwilling to control. And so based upon the country and based upon the individual facts, that can look really different. We represent crime victims. So within this country, there is a subset of immigration policies that are designed to essentially bring individuals who are without status, who have been the victim of a crime, to come forward to report that crime, so that there's not this coercive power imbalance to where essentially somebody is just hiding and it being abused repeatedly and is afraid to do anything about it simply because they are undocumented. There are pathways available to help those undocumented individuals who have been either victims of one of a list of crimes or one of certain forms of human trafficking, or if they are in an abusive relationship where there's, let's say one of the partners in the relationship is a US citizen and the other is not. And there's this, it creates this power inequity, and that power inequity can oftentimes be exploited at the detriment of the individual with the non-citizen. And I don't think it takes a huge stretch of the imagination to think of like what that would look like. It's, you do what I tell you or I'm going to report you. Well, thankfully, there are ways in which those individuals without status don't have to maintain or remain in that dynamic. We also do work along the border, which is constantly in the news, constantly evolving. And we also represent individuals who may or may not be detained. So I guess just in conclusion, based upon those different types of representation in our clinic, you'd have the opportunity to be exposed to admin law, family law, criminal law, constitutional law, federal procedure, and you also have the opportunity to present before different tribunals, different courts, whether that's the administrative system, whether that's the state court system, or whether that's the federal the federal system. So then how do you participate? Well, after your first year of law school, so law school, they say, welcome to law school, here's your course schedule, good luck. After your first year, your second and third year, you have a lot of flexibility to choose and pursue your interests. And so we accept both 2 and 3Ls. And so it's just a matter of applying. We at the clinic, we have both Clinic 1 and Clinic 2. So essentially Clinic 1 is your first semester of the clinic, and if you like it so much, you can choose to reapply and become a Clinic 2, to where you would essentially have had a full year's credit in our clinic. And that's all I have. So I will pass it to Professor Marquez and answer any questions you have at the end.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. You know, I kind of was the last one to get led into the webinar when everybody was practicing. So I thought, though, when the decision was I went last, I was like, oh, you know, they're saving the best for last, is what I was thinking in my head. But then what I found out is, now I see it was strategic, so that Professor Hurd could steal my line that I like to use about practicing with a net. And so it was more strategic than I initially thought. Well, I'm the Consumer Law Clinic Director here at the Law Center, but more about me. I also was a law student here with the University of Houston Law Center. I graduated in 2009, and I also went here as an undergrad, and now I work here. So I've been like tied to this university forever. I'm almost part of the foundation. So I know a lot about it. I've also been a Houstonian, born here 2 miles down the road in the 3rd floor of St. Joseph Hospital, so very close to here. So I have a lot of connections to Houston. So if y'all aren't from here, feel free to ask me. I could give you some, as you can look at me, I know where to eat. I mean, it's something that I can give you some suggestions for food if you're not from Houston or anything like that. And I can just mirror everything that everyone has said so far. I was also a clinic student. So I took 2 clinics, the transactional clinic and the civil clinic. And so I can also talk about what the civil justice clinic will be doing, because it's kind of a merger over the clinic I was in as a student and the clinic I'm directing now. And so you're talking about basically any type of civil litigation. But the most common types of law that we would deal with would be something like, right now we're really into assisting with evictions, you know, after the pandemic. Housing instability has been a big thing. And so a lot of students have been helping with evictions. And the good thing about evictions is, well, good thing for practical experience, bad thing for our clients is they happen pretty quickly here in Texas. But what that does is it allows law students to actually get real trial experience. I mean, I actually had last semester, we decided to do a jury trial, and the students actually got to pick the jury. You know, how often do you have to get to do that before even leaving? You know, for me, it's been, since I got to pick a jury for myself, it's been like 7 years. You know, like you just like right now, I'm still waiting to be on call for a jury trial. I thought I would get called within the past 2 weeks, but it's like sitting by the phone, waiting for someone who you went on a date with to call you back, and nobody ever calls. That's what it's like for trying to get a jury trial. And 2 students, they got to participate, and they got to actually, she got up there, she was nervous. She thought, you know, she really wanted to do transactional law, but she decided that she would go ahead and try it. And, you know, she did fine. We also do bankruptcies. We can help anyone try to get out of debt through a bankruptcy or through debt collection defense. You know, we'll try to analyze a suit to see if there's anything that can be done. We do what's called deceptive trade practices suits. So any type of consumer transaction as well. If they were misinformed of a product or anything like that, we will do that type of case. We actually will do more of property disputes. You know, it could be home ownership disputes, maybe foreclosures, maybe boundary disputes. There's all kinds of ones. I mean, I helped someone last year, you know, they were defrauded, and I was able to get them $130,000 to help buy back the property that they thought they had bought, that they really had bought. And so, you know, that's something that we do. We have divorces. You know, I have to tell you, I was just in family court just yesterday. And as I was sitting there or was it a couple of days ago, Valentine's Day, I'm sorry, Monday. And so, you know, I was sitting there waiting to help someone get a divorce. And as I'm sitting there, you see all the people, because we're at the carryover floor where they have to go to the floor, move over to the next set of elevators. And so you have everybody getting their marriage license, going up, getting married. You know, they're carrying over, and you just see, we saw like 4 or 5 different couples. And I'm thinking to myself, half divorces, half marriages ended divorce. Half of y'all will be in this divorce court come in a few years. So you can get practice on divorce. And it's one of the things that everybody has questions of. Child custody is also a thing. So you can learn about what we call SAPSers. Don't listen to anyone who calls it a SAPCR. They're mispronouncing it. And it's a suit affecting the parent-child relationship. And we also help with those. This is the clinic also where we'll help probate, maybe some small probates, because we don't have time to really get into a big administration or anything like that, but drafting wills as well. Guardianship, if someone becomes unable to take care of themselves, and sometimes, or if they have special needs, then sometimes we have to have a guardianship set up for that person. And so the clinic, the civil justice clinic, will be assisting with those. And any other civil matter that may come up. I mean, that may warrant us assisting. And, there'll be special issues that come up, like for sure, unfortunately, we're in, well, I think anywhere can have natural disasters. And so if there's any type of hurricane or anything like that, that's where we'll step in and try to assist with those sort of things. Students have helped people with with a Harvey contractor disputes, or like landlord tenant issues related to the frost that we had, the big freeze we had last year. And so those are the different types of things. And for myself, I have practiced a little bit in everything. I've dipped my toe into family law, probate, touched immigration, touched employment, personal injury, done some criminal, so if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out. I think that the University of Houston is a very good program, and you all have made a good choice to attend. I'm not sure if y'all have committed or yet, or if you haven't put that deposit, now send the check now, but make it to Ryan Marquez and I will have it delivered, and just put in the extra processing fee just for myself, and I will send it on. Don't worry, just do that. And thank you for coming, and feel free to ask me any questions or ask us any questions if you want to know more about any of our practice areas. We'll be glad to share.
Professor Marquez, a future client of my clinic with that.
Right, the criminal defense clinic. You may need a little bit of help, right? Well, thank you so much, Professor Marquez. I definitely appreciate that. We have one other panelist who I'm just going to put on the spot right now real quickly. She probably knows I'm going to do it because I often does it. Marisha Keys actually works in the admissions office, but she's a recent graduate of the University of Houston Law Center who had the opportunity to participate in one of the clinics. So I'd just like her to share just briefly her experience working in the clinic. She's kind of like Professor Marquez, UH undergrad, UH law school. Now she works for the law center. Once you get like the big, get bitten by the cougar bug, we don't let people go. So when Marisha's done, then I will ask if you have any questions for any of our panelists, just to raise your virtual hand, and I will attempt to get to you in the fairest way possible. Marisha?
All right, well, thanks for that, Angela. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Marisha Keys. I work in the admissions office here as the admissions counselor. I'm a 2019 graduate from the University of Houston Law Center. And I did participate in the civil practice clinic when I was a student here. At that point in time, it was just civil practice. It wasn't this merger that Professor Marquez spoke about, although that sounds incredibly interesting. And I just echo his sentiments as far as what I did when I was in the clinic. I did a few prove-ups. We did a lot of probate and estate matters. It was heavily family law focused. So if that's something you're interested in as a newly admitted student, and maybe you want to practice going forward, I'd strongly encourage it. The clinics are great. The people who work there are fantastic. I enjoyed my time there immensely. And yet now here I sit, sort of continuing the cycle in a different way. But congratulations to those of you who've been admitted. This has been great. So I'll pass the mic back to Angela to open the floor. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Marisha. So now it's your time. If you have any questions, just please raise your virtual hand and direct it to a specific panelist, or if it's just a general question, we'll take those as well. I see Travis Handler. You're up, sir.
Yes, this is just a general question, and my apologies if you already touched on this, but I was wondering, as it concerns like applying for the clinics, what the criterion are for deciding who is selected for which clinic, obviously with the understanding that there's probably limited availability. And if, well, yeah, just that the process and criterion for deciding who goes where.
Sure, that's a great question. So like we mentioned, in your 2L and 3L year, you're eligible to apply. You can't register for a clinic like you could for other classes. The process is a little bit different. So there is an online application that you submit a little before the time registration opens up. In that application, you preference your first, second, and third choice of clinics. And there's a variety of information that we collect in that, about you and kind of your interest in the clinics. And so we use that to make a determination when filtering it. So you don't have to apply to each clinic specifically. There's a joint application that you can fill out.
Okay, thank you. Next hand that I saw was Julia.
Thank you. Yeah, that was actually one of my questions, Travis. So I'm glad that you asked. I just wanted to know, because the clinic opportunities are for 2L and 3Ls, is there anything that 1Ls can do in their summer, something kind of similar or peripheral to any sort of clinical learning?
Do you mean like the summer right after your 1L year?
Yes.
You're actually eligible to take a clinic. For most of our clinics, you can take that after you finish the 1L curriculum. So if you want to go right into it, that summer as you're a rising 2L, you can do that. Other things that you might consider, we have a pro bono program here. And so if you're not necessarily sure you want to take the plunge, take a clinic for a whole semester, or want to get a bite-sized opportunity, we have robust pro bono opportunities you can take advantage of. You'll hear about that as part of the orientation process. That's another alternative that's available to you.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Awesome. Thank you.
Can I add something real quick, just real fast?
Yeah.
So as far as the applications and accepting students, for example, my clinic is 3 students. I know the civil clinic is many more, just because of the rules of adjuncts professors versus actual tenured and supervising a tenured professors and attorneys, excuse me. But at least with my clinic, there is a wait list. So if you do come in after the 3 people that I've accepted, there is a wait list. And I will tell you, people who have been on the wait list have gotten into the clinic because people have dropped. It just happens. But there is a wait list. So don't despair if I or our program director, Thelma Baines, if she emails you back and says there's no room, but we can put you on a wait list. So that's not a problem.
That's good to know. Next hand I saw was Ashley Fansher.
Hi, my question is about the number of clinics that you can take or repeating clinics. Just what are the rules for those things?
Great question. So we generally ask that you keep it to 1 clinic per semester, just because of the investment of time that you have to put in. But you can take 1 clinic each semester if you'd like to do that, right? And some clinics also, I think Professor Sheffy mentioned it, but offer the Clinic 2 option, right? So if you really like the clinic, you take it 1 semester, you want to take it again, you wouldn't have to do the classroom component. And usually for Clinic 2, you serve as more of a mentor for the Clinic 1 students. And then, you get some more advanced case opportunities because of the skills you already built after taking Clinic 1.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we always do encourage you trying out different clinics, because you get different exposure to different things. You also get different connections and all that. So it's good to have different clinics. That's why myself, like I said, I took 2 different ones. And you'll find usually after you take one, it's almost a little addicting. You'll just continue to take. I know I would have, so I took clinics for 3 semesters, and I know had I found out about them earlier or had I had room, I probably would have taken them all 4 semesters.
Anyone else with questions? Okay, we'll go back to Travis.
Yeah, sorry. I was thinking about, this is for Professor Sheffy's comment regarding, he mentioned that the immigration clinic encompasses like a wide range of issues. And I was just wondering if there's any overlap with international law there. Like, I'm thinking specifically with asylum, but anything like that.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So asylum actually, and it's quite appropriate that you pointed to asylum. Asylum is grounded in international conventions. So for example, like the Geneva Convention. So if we think about in the news right now, the idea of the legal right to an asylum, part of that legal right comes from conventions that the United States has signed on to. So from an advocacy perspective, at least presently, no, our clinic doesn't engage in necessarily like international advocacy. However, international agreements do form a large component of immigration law, and so being familiar with those conventions and agreements is integral to understanding the case that you'd be working on.
Thank you.
We have time for a couple more questions if anybody has any questions. I know the panelists did such a fantastic job that maybe don't have questions. Oh, Julia.
This is a question for Professor Locasio. I'm just really curious, as a public defense attorney, what your typical caseload is, and just your work-life balance. It's something that I have really considered pursuing public defense. So just would love to hear a little bit more about your days.
Sure. It's been kind of frankly messed up by the pandemic. Pretty much all of the courts, except for 2 off the top of my head, do things via Zoom now. Or at least that's an option. And so the defense bar has been pretty happy with that, because we can handle our status update conferences or settings that don't really matter as much in the long run. We can do via Zoom and not have to waste the court's time. Our clients don't have to miss work. So it's a little bit changed based on the pandemic, but in general, my caseload is anywhere from 50 to 60 clients. Now that's not cases. A lot of those people have multiple cases. I have a couple clients who have 7 or 8 cases themselves. But that's in contrast with being a prosecutor, where when I was a felony 3 prosecutor on a docket of about 1,200 cases, I had about 900 of them. So the district attorney's office is extremely overworked currently, and they are understaffed for a variety of reasons. So work-life balance is a lot easier as a defense attorney, especially if you decide to hang your own shingle and go on your own and be a private defense attorney. It's completely within your hands how many cases you want to take. If you want to do all retained work, you certainly can. If you want to get on appointment lists throughout the different counties, Liberty County, Fort Bend, Harris, Montgomery, any of the surrounding counties, you can take as many cases as the judges will appoint to you. At some point, you need to step back and say if you have too many cases. But at least at the public defender's office in Harris County, we tend to shoot for 50 to 60 clients per attorney. If you're a younger attorney, so I've been practicing for 11 years. If you are a younger attorney who is just starting or in the 2 to 5 years, they tend to restrict your caseload to let you get into kind of a groove. But if you're in a more experience, as you become more experienced, they give you a higher caseload and also more serious crimes. You tend to be on the lower side of maybe thefts and assault family member second cases. As you progress and you become more experienced, they will give you aggravated robberies. They will give you sexual assaults and maybe even murders. So work-life balance is not, to answer, to get back to your question, work-life balance is doable. As a public defender, it's doable as a private defense attorney. I can't speak to the fact if it's doable as a prosecutor, especially now with the current climate in the DA's office.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Going once? Alrighty. Is it Shefali Chopra?
Yes, Shefali.
Shefali, sorry. Go ahead,
No,
ask your
that's
question.
okay. My question was related to the civil rights clinic, and I was wondering if Professor Marquez, if you could go a little bit into more detail of what the merger was and what is actually getting merged with this clinic.
Well, for the civil justice clinic, there was the consumer law clinic, which we focus mainly on those evictions, bankruptcy, deceptive trade practice, debt collection. And then it's the civil clinic, which focused mainly on the family law type or disputes such as divorce, custody, probate, and guardianship. Those 2 are merging, and we're actually including more property also disputes in there than what we did. We still kind of did some of those in both clinics, but now we're just making it clear that that is one of the things that we do is like property disputes or real estate disputes. Whereas before that, we didn't kind of actually advertise that because it's a little sometimes not even consumer related. So those are the ones that are merging. But the civil clinic always has done any other type of civil case that they want to. I just say even like one time, even in the consumer clinic, one time, because we just felt bad for someone who was sick and had a business and they had an environmental case dispute. So we were in a Superfund case with like 700 other defendants, and that was a big mess just to negotiate that. So it's like it is almost like anything else, like almost the catch-all, the catch-all for any type of litigation as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else? We still have a little bit of time left. Alrighty. Well, if there are no further questions, I would like to thank my panelists for being here today. It was a wonderful session. Hopefully you've gotten a lot of information. You got very excited about participating in the clinics. Like Professor Marquez says, it is time now to submit your deposit so you can hold your space. You can be in that class that will start in our lovely brand new building, right? It'll be the first class to share in that building. So we definitely thank you for joining us. We have a number of other webinars coming up, our Wednesday webinar series for admitted students, covering other topics, student organizations, financial aid, career services, et cetera, et cetera. So please feel free to check those out on our admitted student page, and we look forward to seeing you. Thanks so much, professors. Thanks, everyone.